Good morning, bonjour. My name is George Markovich. I'll be your captain on this 747 flight to Mexico City. It's an Air France 438. Our aircraft today will be a 747-400. If you know about it, the American used to call her the Queen of the Skies, and it's called, well, nicknamed Jumbo. And I was born in Africa, so Jumbo in Africa means welcome. So let me welcome you to the Air France 438 to Mexico. Here we are at the heart of the flight operation of Air France. And the first thing I have to do in the morning is check in to let the company know that I'm present and ready for duty. And pretty much it's the start of our journey to Mexico City. So let's do it. So you see, Mexico, thanks, and have a good flight. So that gives you, put you in a good mood. And the flight is 4:38, local time departure 1:30. Just follow me. This is where we prepare our flights. This is what we call the flight ops. There's 3 of our agents here. They're the one preparing the flights for us, and they did prepare our flight to Mexico City. Normally we have to show up about an hour and 45 minutes prior to the flight, close to 2 hours most of the time. And from here we pick up a flight and we go to a specific area where we can nicely and pleasantly prepare our flight, which takes us about half an hour before we can go on and meet our cabin crew. We'll do that later. So please follow me. Our second step is I had to check in first outside. I'm going to check inside to be sure to have a booth specifically for our flights so we can prepare our flights calmly, quietly, and professionally. So I'm going to check in right now. This is my ID number. This is again the Mexico flight, the flight time departure, local time, Air France 438, and they actually gave us a booth number 14, and if you see up here, it shows up. So when the co-pilots show up in a couple of minutes, they will be knowing that I'm already in the booth 14, getting my flight ready for departure. So Jumbo again, welcome again to our flight planning. This is booth number 14. It's the one we checked in earlier. And I just want to give you an update on before the 2 co-pilots show up on the route today to Mexico City. First of all, we get a bunch of papers here, as in any airline in the world, that gives you all the information you need, obviously, to prepare your flight. The aim, the goal of the paperwork here is to come up with the fuel and a plan for the flight we're going to have today. So basically, the information I have right now, even though we're going to ask for more, because all the tools are here, the phone, the computers, we have access to pretty much everything that the flight ops give us to make our flight safe and sound. First thing I can give you for information is our plane here is, as you can see here, this is one of the papers we use in Air France. This is the reference one. It's called Octave de Référence in French. Gives us a flight time of 11 hours and 23 minutes for a block time of 11:55. So it gives us about 22 minutes for taxiing in and out of Roissy and Mexico City. The other important things or features here, we'll see together, it's the flight, initial flight level, the winds. You see that we have a strong headwind throughout the flight. It's 11 hours and 23 minutes, so it's a really long flight. That's why we need 2 co-pilots on this flight. And our alternate will be Acapulco. You can dream a little bit of where we're going today. And the most important part, you can see here on one of those maps that I just brought up for you, is the weather. This is brought by London at 16 UTC. This is Zulu time for today. You can see that here. It's written down here, and it is pertaining to that flight level, 2550 up to 630, and we'll be in that bracket of altitude from our flight here. You see Paris, not that easy to see. You see France here, Europe, England, and then you see here Greenland, Iceland, and you see North America here, all the way down to the East Coast and Florida. So basically our flight, as you can see here, is a red line. We'll be taking off, going over the UK, pretty much across the whole UK, exiting somewhere over Scotland, flying south of Iceland, and then south of Greenland, before entering northeastern Canadian airspace, pretty much over Newfoundland, and heading towards the Great Lakes, and all the way down through the Midwest, exiting through Texas, and going over, you see here, Caribbean Sea towards Mexico. What you can see here is interesting enough. It looks that it's not too bad flying out, even though there's here a couple of jets to the southern part, or Brittany, or the western part of France, southern part of England. So we could be maybe a little bit getting some light turbulence while climbing through our initial cruising level. And you see here there's a jet up to flight level 310 going northeast. So basically this should be creating some light turbulence. That's what we have here on the paperwork. They give you a rate of 3 out of 9, means light turbulence during the initial climb. And then further down, it should be smooth all the way to North America, where we should be crossing a jet, which is at flight level 350. And here, this should be a light to moderate turbulence, according to what we see here. You can see here, moderate turbulence to 350, pretty much throughout here. So we cannot avoid this, otherwise it would be a big detour. So basically, we could expect about 7-8 hours of flight, some light to moderate turbulence. And if I look at the paperwork here, I can see here after, about 8 hours of flight, there's a number 4 and number 5. You see, 8:20 till pretty much 8:45, let's say 9, about an hour. We have 5 on a scale of 9, which is moderate turbulence. It's just at the threshold of moderate turbulence. And then further down here, across America, this should not be a problem. This one, maybe during our descent here, you see there's some CBs, so cumulonimbus clouds from 250 up to 380. So we should cross them during our descent towards Mexico. Once again, this is at 6 Zulu time, so it should be moving a little bit to the east, and we could eventually avoid it. We still would be flying in clear weather and during daytime, so that should not be a problem. So looking at here, it's some light chops during initial climb, and after about 8 hours, light to moderate for about half an hour. This is pretty much the first outlook that I have for our flight, and then further down we'll be able to try to summarize it and eventually have more information with all the different tools we're going to get from our flight dispatch. This is it. Yeah, the first important thing is obviously safety. That's why we showed you initially the weather and the time of the flight and the route that we're going to follow today to Mexico City. The second part, obviously, we're an airline, so we have to carry passengers. That makes our bread, and that's how I make a living. So basically what we'll see here is a certain number of information that would be interesting. Our flight here, it's very detailed. It's 438. I pitch in the number, and it brings up a certain numbers of information as we speak. It's an up-to-date information, so while we're speaking, it will still be updated. As you see here, this is the time expected, which is a Greenwich Mean Time of departure, 1:30 local time. It is a 747-400, and this is the plane we're going to have today. It's Fox Golf India Tango Hotel. The information that I don't have, which normally should appear here, they don't tell me where does that aircraft come from. Normally it should be written here if it comes from Rio, from Mexico, from Montreal. So maybe it comes from maintenance. I'm going to have to figure that out, because if it comes from maintenance, it means that it could be something work done on the airplane. The airplane itself, there's 36 business class and 396 coach, and we're expecting about 27 up front in business, so there should be some seats available up there, and 354 in the back. So basically, we're not looking at a very heavy aircraft today. 360 passengers for 436 layout for that aircraft. What we're looking at here is a number of detail the freight will be carrying. This is the passengers load for 360 people. This is the baggage, their baggage, to be able to load them up. There's no mail here, as you can see, it's 0. And we have a certain freight. We're carrying about 9 tons of freight on this aircraft to Mexico. So now here, this is a tendency. So basically, as you see here, minus 4 tons almost. That means that they're still loading everything in the airplane. I'm sorry about this. So basically, we should have what is expected, 48.2 tons of load on that aircraft, passengers and cargo all together. A bunch of phone numbers here that I can call, and I will call them to have further information for our flight. And for the rest, pretty much, we'll show you later. But we have a summary here from the 3 guys you saw previously that gives up even more information and details on the flights that we're going to have to do today. So no TAMs, as you used to know, no TAMs, no district airmen. So all information that are pertinent to our flight. I'm talking of age, airports and things like this. This is just a summary. They're very polite here. So they say hello, and then they say in French, bonjour, and you're on a random route, which makes sense. It won't be a track over the Atlantic, but a route that will be computed by the company. It will be north of the tracks. I'll show you later. The tracks over the Atlantic are the flights of most of the planes flying to Western Europe, to America are flowing. Those are tracks, A, B, C, D, E. We'll be flying north of those tracks. And you can see here, Iceland, green line is up here. So we'll be flying over and north of those tracks. This is an information that they give us. It gives you a pretty good image of the flight. It has been followed at 3 different times of the day, 12, 6 p.m., and midnight. So all the information we got are at 3 different times. So you make a pretty good idea of how the flight will be. I remind you there's about 11 and a half hours of flight, so we need the information to be pertinent throughout the flight. There's no dangerous areas. Zone in French means zone dangereuse on our route, and our levels and the time we'll be flying, passing those waypoints. We even know the guy and his phone number. It's not to have lunch with him. It's to have information if we definitely need it or we need more explanation on the flight. They just confirmed the basic weight of the airplane. We're 3 crew members, technical crew, 14 cabin crew. They mean that water in the airplane will be only 75% filled, which is normal for a company. It's a basic empty weight and the index. We need all of this, obviously, to compute the takeoff on our aircraft. This is the passenger, as I told you before, so it's not full. This is status. I won't go into detail, but that's for security reasons. And I have the information here. You see, I didn't have it on the computer, but I have here, it comes from Mexico. So if we don't know the way, he will find it for us. He's coming from Mexico, this airplane, or she's coming from Mexico. That's pretty much what we have. The fuel, as you know, fuel are very important for any airline, the first or second post of expenses of the company. So what you see here is some information about how not to make a good decision, but at least to give us some clues of how to manage better our fuel. Here they say that on Mexico, in average, we use 700 kilos more than what is in our papers. So they tell us, be careful, you could be using more fuel because of the route that you will have. Again, it's a long flight. We could have headings and things like this that will have an impact on our fuel. The time flight, there's plus 2 minutes, on 11 hours and a half and 30 minutes. It's pretty good. And then they give us another margin. 90% of all our flights have been using the flight plan fuel. So if you add more fuel, you'll be using more fuel to carry that fuel to destination. So you have to be careful, very careful with the fuel policy of the company. And 99% of the flight use about 2 tons more. So we have to make a decision with all those information of what the fuel we'll be using and uploading today to Mexico. And the last information we have here is the taxi time. Why? Because taxi time means using fuel. So they give you 23 minutes for departure. You know you'll be using 45 kilos per minute. You just add this together and you know how much your fuel consumption will be on taxi here out of Paris. And in Mexico, they give you 9 minutes of taxiing, the average. That means a very low fuel consumption to taxi back to our gate in Mexico City. So all those information are just here to help us make the best decision for the fuel and the best route for Mexico City. So welcome again. Here we have our 2 co-pilots. As I told you before, it's a long flight, 11 and a half hours of flight. So we have Frédéric Moulinier, co-pilot, and Guillaume Beaufils, the other co-pilot. So we'll need definitely all 3 of us to bring that airplane to our destination. And let me remind you, there's another 14 crew members. Those will be cabin crew that will meet in about half an hour before we head on to the airplane. What we're doing right now is we have another 20 minutes to wrap up our flight plan and pretty much deciding on the fuel. It's going to be close to 140 tons to our destination for 11 and a half hours of flight. And we'll go into the details of the flight about who's going to be on board, who's not going to be on board, if we have to upload cargo, freight. In that case, we'll have to add more fuel. So we'll definitely have a pretty good idea before we leave from here on the figures for the airplane. And at the airplane, we'll finish up the work with the last detail and light information we'll get from the flight ops.
Welcome again on board this time of our 747-400. We're almost ready to go. 30 minutes to go before startup, so we'll brief right now. with the two other crews, technical crews. So the information that I can give you right now is we definitely have a final fuel of 135 tons of fuel. This is what we decided to upload, and that will make us take off at close to 370. That's 370 tons here in Paris. So for the briefing, first of all, the threats. Well, the weather is not too bad. We know the airport, so let's say that the threat would be complacency or knowing too much, thinking that we know too much of the airport. So we'll be extremely vigilant on the clearances, fair clearance eventually, if you have to cross runways, and to be sure that we don't make any mistakes during the taxi. For the rest, we're parked at Echo 24, which is here. It will be normally your standard push facing east, and we should go on Papa for Romeo Papa 5. I do believe that we'll be taking off runway 27 left, so we'll have to taxi all the way via, I do believe it could be Echo 2, Quebec, and then on 27 left, coming from Quebec, we'll take the third right on Quebec 4, which leaves us about 3,600 meters of runway length. If they give us a better taxiway, we'll be taking it, but actually we took the performance out of Quebec 4 to be sure that we can take off at that weight from this taxiway. The departure will be an Atrex 3 Alpha, so the initial level is flight level 100, and it's going to be a right turn out. This is an RNAV departure, so pretty much runway axis, right turn at 1.5, and then we'll go and get the Atrex pretty much north from Paris. The minimum safe altitude is 3,200 feet, 3,200 feet, 3,200 feet, 3,200 feet. So it's pretty flat around here. And in order to do so, I'll have the radar on the left, and you can have the radar too on your side. Okay. For the rest, we have a standard departure, which means that we'll be climbing to 3,300 feet before accelerating, before speeding up. And standard procedure for Paris. The landing, in case of emergency, we have what we'll call a ZAC, which is an altitude that we have to reach as soon as possible before we can eventually speed up and come back. It's here 1,900 feet on the northern runway. And for the landing weight, will be a little bit heavy. That's close to 100 tons overweight, so we'll need about 50 minutes to dump fuel, to jettison fuel, in order to be able to come back and land here in Paris. The weather is fine for takeoff and for landing. We took a 5 knots tailwind for the performances because the wind is from the south and it's a westerly heading and a westerly runway for takeoff. So be sure that we have all of performance included for departure. That's pretty much what I had to say. Any questions? No questions? So if you agree, we can shoot a pre-flight checklist.
Pre-flight checklist. Gear pins removed. Oxygen.
This is 100% on the left side.
Right side. Flight instruments.
Okay, I read 356 for the heading, and in the middle, same thing. Altimeters, I have a QNH of 1012 set on the side, and I read 350 feet.
Heading 356 altimeter QNH 1002 set. Parking brake.
Set.
Fuel control switches.
Cut off.
Pre-flight checklist complete.
Thank you. For the fuel, while we're here, we can confirm that we uploaded 135 tons, and it's pretty much well balanced, as you can see. We have a bunch of different tanks, and it's pretty much balanced between the different tanks, and we have about 25 tons in the standard tank, so we'll have to deal with that too. Is that okay with you?
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, get down to brief the flight pressure, greet our passengers, and I'll come back in about 10 minutes. The most important part here is being sure that we have the good performance and the good speeds. Mistakes do happen at this level, so Guillaume and I, we checked weight. It's going to be a little bit lighter than forecast. We're going to be close to 368 tons. So we checked the zero fuel weight, 231.7. Right. Then the speeds, we have a reduced takeoff at 36 degrees. It's been checked. And for the speeds, it's going to be a dry takeoff and a dry runway. V1, 148. So there's one knot difference. 166 for VR. and V2 177, and it's checked on both sides. And for the trim, it's going to be 17.5, 17.5 takeoff. So it's 2.5 difference within the margin of 3%, so we can accept it. And it's going to be a LNAV VNAV departure. It means that we'll follow lateral and vertical navigation, and we'll have to put the trim for takeoff. For the rest, well, we're almost fully ready. 355 passengers on board, so it's not a full bird, but we're fully ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, bonjour. Au nom de tout l'équipage, je vous souhaite la bienvenue à bord de ce 747-400 à destination de Mexico City. Aujourd'hui, nous avons la chance d'avoir Monsieur Frédéric Moulinier et Monsieur Guillaume Beaufils comme copilotes. Le temps de vol aujourd'hui de 11h25. Le temps en route est, je dirais, de saison. Quelques petites turbulences lors de la montée initiale. Ensuite, après 3 heures de vol, nous avons de la légère turbulence également due à des jets, des vents relativement forts en altitude. C'est une turbulence de l'ordre de 4 sur une échelle de 9, donc ce n'est pas méchant. Et moi, je vous demanderai de rester attaché lorsque vous êtes assis, et chaque fois que le signal lumineux attaché vos ceintures sera illuminé sur ce vol. Le temps en destination est beau. Une température actuelle de 12 degrés avec un léger vent du nord-est, et le temps devrait rester le même jusqu'à notre arrivée. Je vais vous laisser en compagnie de votre chef de cabine. Nous avons la chance aujourd'hui d'avoir M. Yannick Alleguen et de son équipe commerciale. Je suis certain qu'ils feront le maximum pour rendre ce vol le plus agréable possible. Je vous remercie de votre écoute et je souhaite un excellent vol. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is your captain. On behalf of the whole crew, I wish you a very warm welcome on board this Boeing 747-400. Bound for Mexico City. It is almost time, in 3 minutes. We are fully ready. We'll to push back hopefully pretty soon. Flight time today will be 11 hours and 25 minutes. And the weather en route is not too bad. There's some light turbulence during our initial climb. And then after 3 hours of flight for about half an hour. And then after 8 hours of flight for about 45 minutes. It's due to some jet winds at our cruising level. It's about on a scale of 9, it's about a 4. So it's light chops to moderate chops. So I would suggest you remain fastened while you're seated. And each time I switched the fast seatbelt sign on during this flight. Today we're lucky enough to have Monsieur Frédéric Moulinier and Monsieur Guillaume Beaufils as our co-pilots. And our flight purser is Monsieur Yannick Alleguen. And I'm sure he will do his utmost with his whole commercial crew to make this flight as enjoyable as possible. I do thank you for listening. I wish you a very nice flight. Voilà, de retour.
Air France 438, gate Eco 24, 3 ready now.
Roger, 438, can type 121.925, bye-bye.
121.925, Air France 438, thank you, good day.
Au revoir. Dans la centrale et au stop 121.975, Air France
So we're pretty much all set. Doors are closed. We'll just need debriefing with the ground crew and we'll be ready to go.
Ground, good morning, Air France 438, stand Eco 24, request pushback.
France 438, good morning, stand by, call you back shortly.
Standing by, France 438.
Before startup checklist?
Before startup checklist. Flight deck door.
Vous avez un délai, là j'ai une demande
Passenger signs.
de 24.
On. MCP.
So V2 177 heading 266 and 10,000 feet.
Ok, donc
Take up speed.
We have 148 for V1, VR 166, V2 177.
C'est du pre-flight.
Completed.
Trim.
7.7 on both sides, 0 and 0.
Taxi and takeoff briefing.
Completed.
Thrust lever.
Idle.
Beacon, both. Before start checklist complete.
Thank you. So they will call us back. They want us to meet in position, right?
so, because...
438, push and start approved, face east.
Pushing back facing east, Air France 438.
Ground.
So Jet 212, hello, push and start approved,
Ground.
face east.
We're starting out a 4-3 engine. As you can see, what we're looking for is obviously N2. Stand by. And then what we're looking for is all pressure, otherwise it's a no-go. And secondly, we have EGT, that's a light up, and N1 in sequence. If we don't have any all pressure, any N1, or in case of tailpipe fire, we'll have to obviously abort the engines start up. In that case, the rest is automatic. If it's a hang start, a hot start, the automatic system can take care of itself. Starter sequence is now completed. Checking the EGT. Starting to decrease. And the engine should stabilize around 2, 4, 6, and 6. Ready for twin 1? Starting twin 1.
Starting to N1.
Okay. Same procedure for 2 and 1. Looking at N2. All pressure. EGT, light up, and then we're looking for N1. Okay, parking brake is set. You may remove the tow bar and the safety pin, and you call me back. Thank you. So the parking brake is set. He's removing the tow bar, the safety pin, and the engine startup 1 and 2 is completed. EGT is decreasing, and we have a 2466 continue. And I confirm startup sequence is now completed. You'll be able to disconnect, leave the aircraft, and I'll be waiting for your hand signal on the left-hand side of the aircraft. Thank you very much. Have a great day and a great weekend. C'est parfait. Merci sur la gauche. Bonne journée. Bon courage. Laps 20. When it comes to the left, we check now the flight controls. Right. You can see here. Yeah, we're checking the flight control. That can you see here? The elevator, and then the rudder as soon as it's going to be clear on the left side. Okay, I see the agent on the left showing me a thumbs up and the gear pin. So, si tu veux me suivre, left, neutral, and right, neutral. And before taxi checklist?
Before taxi checklist, anti-ice, off, recall, checked, auto brake,
RTO?
flight controls,
Checked.
FMS takeoff parameters,
Okay, I confirm it's going to be flaps 20 once, twice, and 3 times. Compared.
ground equipment,
It's removed on the left side, it's clear.
clear right, before taxi checklist complete.
Good.
France 438 ready to taxi.
France 438, taxi stop Romeo Papa 5.
We taxi stop Romeo Papa 5, Air France 438.
47 has passed behind us to face south, push approved, Jersey 3502. Air France 438, contact ground 11975, bye.
11975, Air France 438, bye.
Bonjour Air France 438, taxi left Romeo, and I call you back for a shortcut.
Left on Romeo, waiting for a shortcut, Air France 438.
Okay. Distance for Quebec 6?
4,200 meters.
Another 6 degrees, full length. Okay, thank you. Okay, you're with ground north, so if you're ready, all of you, all 2 of you,
It's okay.
briefing. It will be a takeoff on 27 left by kilo 6 at almost 370 tons for reduced takeoff. If there's any problem, I will readjust the thrust. Takeoff on the Atrix 3 Alpha was a right turnout, climb 10,000. There's a frequency after takeoff 124.35. The radar on both sides, the weather is pretty nice here in Paris. The runway is dry and reduced at 36 for the speed. Let me remind you that there's a high speed. Can you hear me? There's a high speed bracket between 80 knots and 148 knots, so we'll spend some time. If there's anything that is really paramount, like engine fire, engine failure, if there's a wind shear, predicted wind shear, which would not be the case today, and if we're sure that we won't be able to take off, in that case I will clearly announce stop, and I remind you of the procedure: reduce your throttles, disconnect the motor throttle, speed brake manually out, you confirm that, reverse, and the RTO, we should normally have some RTO starting at 85 knots, otherwise you will brake with me. Okay? Otherwise, at V1, 148, the announcement is clearly go. In that case, we'll have some time on the runway, 166 to VR, we'll rotate 166. We said runway axis, 1900 feet, right turnout towards Atlex is the standard departure. About 50 minutes of fuel dumping before coming back, and we'll be asking for the same runway, 27 left, the long runway. It's beautiful weather. If it's something that is really out of control like a fire, in that case, I will certainly ask for a shortcut, do a visual on the same runway, and we'll land overweight. We have the length to do that here in OSC. Otherwise, we'll have time to dump and come back to do a standard ILS 27 left. Any questions?
Any question? No question.
Okay, good. So, before takeoff checklist?
Before takeoff checklist, flaps.
20.
Before takeoff checklist complete.
Thank you. So, Quebec 6, next right.
Air France 438, contact tower 119250, au revoir.
192.
119250, Air France 438.
Great, bye.
Good morning, Air France 438, approaching landing point Quebec 6.
Good morning, 438 from Quebec 6, line up and take off runway 27 left, wind 200 degrees, 8 knots.
Clear line up and take off runway 27 left, Air France 438.
Okay. Radar on both sides.
Radar.
Don't forget the announcement for the cabin crew.
Finally is clear.
Okay, thanks. I can see the windsocks, wind from the south, for about 8 to 10 knots, so it looks credible.
PNC, préparez-vous pour le décollage.
Well, it's clear. You're going to be ready for a roll link takeoff.
It's okay for me.
Okay, we got 10 knots. There's no one on 27 right. And their 380 has cleared
Approaching
the runway.
27 left.
We're clear, the checks has been done, and we've kept it ready. Runway's clear, and we're clear for takeoff.
On runway 27 left.
Takeoff.
Set.
Checked.
$80 knots.
Checked.
V1.
Rotate. Positive climb.
Gear up.
And now.
Checked.
Straks 29 speed.
Checked.
Air France 438, contact departure 12435. Good morning.
12435 is departure, Air France 438, PQ, good day.
Climb.
Check. Good departure. Good morning, Air France 438 on Atrex 3 Alpha departure, using 2400 feet.
Bonjour, Air France 438, identified, climb flight level 180.
We climb flight level 180, Air France 438.
Zero checked. Runway's clear, and we're clear for takeoff.
On runway 27 left.
Takeoff.
Press set.
Checked.
Eighty knots.
Checked.
V1.
Rotate. Positive climb.
Gear up.
L nav.
Checked.
Straks 29 speed.
Checked.
Air France 438, contact departure 12435. Good morning.
12435 is departure, Air France 438, PQ, good day.
Climb.
Check. Good departure. Good morning, Air France 438 on Atrex 3 Alpha departure, using 2400 feet.
Bonjour, Air France 438, identified, climb flight level 180.
We climb flight level 180, Air France 438.
Zero checked.
Delta 335 Papa, contact Paris 13555, over. 13555, 33555. Go on, operation 8 on 3,970.
Flaps 10 now.
Flaps 10.
Fraction 8 Alpha Fox, continue present heading, climb flight level 190. Oceanic 240, landing 190, over. From climb flight level 190,
Flaps 5.
fraction 8 Alpha Fox. And 100, fraction 8 Alpha.
Flaps 5.
You are also still at 212, climbing flight level 100 on Brooklyn Bravo. Be Bravo. Bonjour, level 212 identified. Bonjour, this is Mike 24,000 ground, 25,000. Bonjour, Ryanair 86 Mike identified, climb flight level 100. Climb level 100, 200. Air France 438, tourne à droite, Atrex. Air France 438, sorry, turn right, Atrex.
Right to Atrex, Air France 438.
Heading north.
Fraction 8, Alpha Fox, turn left, direct Doha. Left direct Doha.
Check.
3117, 3101.
Flaps 1. Atrex L nav.
Checked. Can set standard. Yep. Flaps up.
Flaps up.
Departure Jersey 3502 on the FL 3 Bravo.
After takeoff checklist. Landing gear. Up and up. Flaps up. Altimeter.
Standard set.
Standard set. After takeoff checklist complete.
Thank you.
Climb flight level 190. Flight level 190. Flight level 190.
Flight level 100.
Okay, I'm deleting this.
Air France 438, contact Paris 13555, au revoir.
With Paris 13555. Air France 438. QBD.
So optimal would be 310.
Okay.
Whatever they can give us is good.
Paris Control, good morning Air France 438. Flight level 110, climbing flight level 180.
Air France 438, bonjour, climb level 260, route Vezan-Ratic.
We climb flight level 260, Vezan, Ratuk. Air France 438.
260.
Check.
And whenever you want, Vaison, Ratuk.
Vezan, Ratuk.
I agree with Vaison and Ratuk next time. Also direct Vaison, Magenta-Lavert.
Check.
Doesn't look too bad, but I think we'll need the engine anti-ice, nacelle anti-ice whenever you're ready. Yep.
Air France 264, contactez Maastricht 132, décimale 205, au revoir.
Engine anti-ice on.
Check.
32 et 205 pour Air France 264.
Yes, right now we're still climbing to our initial cruising level. Just to wrap up a little bit what we did. We were at a Terminal E. We pushed back, taxied on this taxiway, went on Romeo, went all the way up to Gulf and Quebec to be able to join the northerly runway, which is 27 left. And we came in from Quebec, made the first ride on Quebec 6, and we took off with a full length at Roissy, 27 left. The departure that we were assigned to was a normal and standard for the northerly departures, which is our case today. So it's pretty much a runway axis and a right turnout towards a position, a waypoint called Atrex, climbing to 10,000 feet. We're just answering now the ATC. Okay, so that's about it for the departure. Right now we're with the British, the ATC. $28,000. And as you can see, the weather outside and the light turbulence are what we had forecast during our flight planning. And it should normally subsidize, as you can see the blue out there, as soon as we leave the British Isle, pretty much across the Atlantic, all the way to Greenland. That's about it for our initial departure.
Shot line 01, descent flight level 150, be level to beam Tiger. Descending flight level 150, level by Tiger, outline 01. Air France 438, contact London 132.605.
132.605, with lead node Air France 438, take away.
Goes to 1.
You got it?
London Control, Air France 438, good morning, flight level 280.
Air France 438, London Control, good afternoon. After Sunday, route to Mammon.
Maman.
After Sandy, Mogul, Air France, Mammal, Air France 438.
Alors Sandy,
Sandy,
Mammal.
Mammal.
Okay, welcome back. We're almost entering the Oceanic airspace. We just had our clearance. It's pretty much close to what we have on departure. There's only one waypoint that have been changed. Well, we'll be arriving over Canada. But basically, we have what we're expected to have. So basically, you need three three items for the oceanic clearance. Is the altitude, the flight level. Right now it's 330, 33,000 feet, and we're at that altitude. The Mach, which means an airspeed, in this case Mach 0.85, that's part of the clearance too. You can read it here. Mach 0.85 and flight level 330. Now the route is this one. It's being inserted in the FMS, and that's what we're following right now. So we're approaching a waypoint called Balix. This is our entry point for the Atlantic route, and then all the rest is down here. It's been loaded up by Guillaume. 61 north, 20 west, 62 north, 30 west, 62 north, 40 west, 61 north, 50 west. We're just
With
at
the Oceanic 124-175, Air France 438, thank you, good day.
Okay, right now we're turning Balix, and we're three things to check. The clearance have been checked, and after this the level, the Mach, and right now what we'll do when Guillaume is ready is we'll put an offset to the right of 1 nautical mile. It is not compulsory, but it's definitely a good thing to do. So we're not exactly on the track, we're 1 nautical miles north of the track. So if there's another aircraft ahead of us, we can eventually decide, so we won't be flying into its turbulence. Check
Okay,
it out.
now 6120 north, magenta, 322 nautical miles, it's okay. The heading 294, check.
Okay, what Guillaume just did, we have another option here, fuel page. You see we have an alarm, fuel load
Center
center,
tank.
checked, meaning that we use the fuel in the center tank. Basically now we just switch off the two main pumps, and we don't have basically fuel anymore. We're going to use now the fuel from the other 4 tanks.
Now, George, you
I agree.
okay for the offset?
I checked. So we'll be flying north, 1 nautical miles north of the route. And right now what Guillaume just checked is one, the distance, and the true track leaving Balix. So we're sure that we're on the right track. We don't have any navigational error. But what we have to do now is check in about 10 minutes, make a position check on the map to confirm that we're on our route, the one that is cleared and that we're given by Shenwick. Guillaume is going to call now Shenwick, and we'll come back to you later.
Shenwick, Air France 438, good morning.
Air France 438, Shenwick, go ahead.
Air France 438, CPDLC, Gander next.
Air France 438, Shenwick, understand CPDLC. Can you check and confirm your next Oceanic area?
We have Oceanic clearance, of course.
We have Oceanic clearance, Air France 438.
Roger, can you confirm your next Oceanic area? Is it Gander or Reykjavik, Shenwick?
It's Gander.
Next will be Gander, Air France 438.
Roger, can you confirm your north coordinate at 20 west, 30 west, Shenwick?
Coordonnées au 30 et...
At 30 west, it will be 62 north, 30 west.
Roger, France 438, Shenwick, CPDLC, Reykjavik next. Contact yourself, I'll check on finally 6622, backup 88790. Crossing 61 north, contact Iceland radio on VHF 127.850, backup HF 4675, Shenwick.
Okay, your primary 6622, backup at 879er at 30 west, 62 north. On VHF 127.850, backup 4675, Air France 48.
We're CPDLC. We'll let you know later if you're not familiar with that. Meaning that we have a data link contact with the Shenwick. So it's pretty easy. They will send us messages through our computers and the FMS. But we still have to have what we call a cell call check in case they have to call us. So that's what we heard just before. And Guillaume has been tuning in the AGF frequencies, and they ask us to switch at 60 north with Reykjavik on a VHF frequency because we fly north. We're close actually to Iceland, and we can have eventually a VHF communication with Iceland. And after that we'll switch back to AGF. They even assign us a squawk code in order to be able to follow up from Iceland. So as I said before, the Oceanic clearance is three important things that you have to remember. A level, clearance has to have a level, a Mach, it's a percentage of speed of sound. It's a Mach for us is 85 today. And the third thing is a clearance, route clearance that we had. We confirm it with Guillaume. We check the heading, the true heading and true tracks from each waypoint and the distance to be sure that we didn't make any mistakes in our FMSs. So that's the most important part. Right now, what we'll do is compute equitime points between different airports in case of emergency to know where we have to land in Iceland or in Greenland, eventually in Newfoundland. The weather is fine. I'll keep you posted a little bit later as soon as it will be done with that paperwork. Basically, right now, we are in the Oceanic clearance. We're following it. We're 1 nautical miles north of our route. And the next point is to check if we're in the right route. And that means that I put in a time, it's about a minute ago, to check if we're right on track. And we have to do that at every 2 degrees or 10 minutes after each waypoints throughout the Atlantic. This is compulsory, and that enables us to be sure that we're on our track and we didn't make any what we call gross navigation error. This is the big mistakes that people happen on the Atlantic, and sometimes they're not in the right position. It's over the ocean. So we'll try to be on the right track to Mexico City today.
Good afternoon. My name is Guillaume Beaufils. I'm first officer on the Boeing 747-400 for 7 years. Now I'm trying to explain you here the primary flight display. On this flight display we have the horizon, we are the pitch with the flight director here. Here we have the speed and here the altitude. Now we are flying at Mach decimal 8.5. We fly about 8 nautical miles per minute. Here we have the nav display with the track of the aircraft. We have just passed the 62 north 020 west, direct to the Greenland. Next waypoint will be 62 north 040 west. Okay, here we have the MCDU. The MCDU is a computer to speak with the aircraft. It's possible to give orders to the autopilot with this CDU or with this panel. This panel is the MCP. We have here a window for the speed. Here is the heading of the aircraft, the altitude. We have 3 PA. And this panel is to change a lot of parameters of the nav display and the altimeter settings. For example, it's possible to change the range of the nav display. Here it's now 80 nautical miles, 40 nautical miles. And on this nav display we can see here the airport. Okay, it's for the flight instruments. Okay, here we have the EEC. This is a feature to control the engine and the thrust limit of these engines. Here we have the IRS. IRS is the system for the inertial navigation. We have 3 IRS, left, center, right. Now here we have the electric panel with 4 generators, 1 per engine. It's very simple and it's very comfortable for the pilot to have this redundancy of electric power. Now here we have the hydraulic panel with 4 engine drive pump and 4 hydraulic circuits. For example, we have on the circuit 4 the normal brakes. On the circuit 1, the first alternative brakes and another alternate brakes on the circuit 2. And we have a lot of redundancy of this hydraulic for the flight controls. Okay, we have on this picture the 4 hydraulic systems of the Boeing 747. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have here an auxiliary power, hydraulic power, auxiliary hydraulic pump to have hydraulic pressure on ground for the brakes and for the cargo doors and a lot of device. These 4 levers are the levers in case of engine fire, with on the left wing 2 bottles A and B and 2 bottles A and B on the right wing of the aircraft. This lever is in case of APU fire. Usually we don't use the APU during flight. This panel is in case of cargo fire with a specific system with a bottle in this extinguisher in this cargo. This panel is to start the engine with a possibility to start with an auto start. With the auto start, the aircraft managed to start very simply the engines. Here we have the jettison system to dump fuel in case of trouble during takeoff. If we have to land and we are too heavy to land, we have to jettison fuel with this panel. Here we have the fuel panel. The fuel panel, you can see also on the lower case, we have 4 main tanks, 2 reserve here. We have a stab tank, but we don't use it. Stab means stabilizer. It's in the rear of the aircraft. Now here we have the fuel panel with a lot of pumps, and here the crossfeed to change the configuration of the fuel system. This configuration is automatic for the most important part.
So right now we're pretty much in the mid of the Atlantic, still at flight level 330, 33,000 feet. As you can see here on the page of the performance, the optimal level is 33,600 and a maximum 36,700. So we're pretty good. If we're close to the opti, we'll be using less fuel. So we'll try to stay here until we get this number close to 340, and then Guillaume will ask eventually for higher level in about, let's say, half an hour. When it gets down to the route, we're between the 30 west and 40 west. That's for the longitude. The latitude, we're 62 degrees north. And if you look at the map here, we still are on our flight plan, and we're pretty much on schedule. It looks like kind of primitive, but this is the way we do it. I have 2 equi-time points. The first one here is at 1610, so we passed it. That means that before 1610 Greenwich time, if we had eventually a problem, basically engine problems or eventually pressurization problems or a passenger that would be ill, we would return to Prestwick. Between 1610 and 1633, not even half an hour, we will go to Reykjavik, which is here, the island. And after 1633, we'll go to Goose Bay, which is in Labrador in Canada. So we have actually clearly a decision that has to be made according to those two timings. What you see here is the HF frequencies. The yellow line is the route, and you can see the white part. This is the southern tip of Greenland, as I told you before, Iceland, and you can eventually start seeing the coast of Canada. We'll be flying pretty much over Labrador and then getting close to Quebec and then the Midwest in the States. So important part here is to have a briefing eventually if something happens, what to do. So Guillaume was nice enough to prepare a number of elements here. The weather at Prestwick, so that was the first alternate in case of emergency. See, the weather is fine. The wind is from the west, almost calm. Visibility is more than 10. That's 10 kilometers. And there's some broken clouds at 3,400 feet. Temperature is good, dew point, and the QNH. The design here, or the drawing anyway, shows you what is available to us. It's a big aircraft, so we need a big runway in case of landing. You see there's runway 30 and 12. Both have ILSs. So that's an aid to the landing. And there's a smaller one, 03. With the kind of wind that we have, we would have chosen definitely to go straight in for an ILS-12. Obviously, we'll look into the NOTAMs, the Northeastern Airmen, and other features. But basically, it gives you a pretty good idea of what we would do in case of emergency. Two other important points is the runways are 45 meters wide. It's not too bad, but we're looking for 60 meters on the 747 to be able to make a turnaround. But you always have what we call turning paths at the end of the runways. Altitude, in general, it's the MSA, minimum safe altitude. You see that it's 4,000 feet. So it's a sketch. We have the plates of the airport, but in case of emergency, we can go straight. We know that we have an ILS-12, a long runway, and safety altitude to get there. Now, between those two time here, 1610 and 1633, we decided to go, if we have a problem, to Iceland, and this is it. Beautiful weather. Cav okay, ceiling and visibility is okay. Wind, it's a little bit more windy, 110 degrees for 20 knots, 2 degrees colder, and QNH. So basically, two runways. It's 110 at 20 knots, so we'll be using runway 11. So it's going to be a straight headwind, and in this case, we have an ILS-2. So we're super lucky. It is an easy way in. 5,000 feet, so we'll retain 3,000. We come from the west. And let's give us a second image for eventually an alternate in case of problem, which will be something we'll keep in mind for the next 6 minutes. And after 1633, well, we decided to go to Goose Bay. Unfortunately, this is a winter time, and you can see here the weather's not as good as in Europe, but let's say that it's windy, 260, 18, gusty 23. Visibility is good, and there's some broken clouds at 15,000 feet, so you can almost go visual. What is interesting to note here is the dry snow, drifting snow. So this is something that eventually would be not a problem, but you should keep in mind if we have to divert for a reason or another to that airfield. Temperature is -19, and if you look at this, you see there's one runway for us, 26 and 08, and in this case we'll be using 26. The good point is that the wind, again, is the headwind, because we have limitations, crosswind limitation with any aircraft, and this one, if it's a wet runway or there's snow, we definitely have limitations. So here's a long runway, there's an ILS 26, so it's perfect if we want to go in, if we have to go in. Minimum safety altitude, it's not that high, 3,100 feet, and there's an approach frequency. So that means that if something really happens, we will have time, there's a third pilot to go into the plates of the airport, but we know exactly what to expect. So for us, it's pretty good. We have a direct, if we go back, was a headwind, with a long runway Weir Niles, and the same thing for Goose Bay. So I would say that today actually the conditions are really great if we had to divert to an alternate. And after this, when we come over Canada, it's going to be super easy in the sense that you have a bunch of different airports, all the way from Quebec all the way down to Mexico. So that's not an issue. The issue is when you're over the water, and this is what we did. So basically, we're ready. Hopefully, we'll bring you to Mexico City. That's what you paid your ticket for. But this is important to know what to do. And at one point, one of the co-pilots is resting. I will be taking a rest a little bit later on, so I will brief them to know what to expect if something happens by the time I get off the bunk bed. I know that they will be doing exactly what we shared together as a flight plan in case of alternate or in case of emergency. Let me tell you about the, I would say almost a love affair of any airlines having jumbos, especially for Air France. Let's go back a little bit in the history. I'm not going to make you a story about the jumbo, even though I love it so much. My dad used to fly them too, way back. And if you look at the history in the 1960s, there was a 707. That was the long range going across the Atlantic. It had 149 passengers. When they made up the jumbo, it was more than double that, 350 passengers. And on one engine of a 747 was more powerful than a four engine of a 707. So if you look at Boeing, if you still go now, you will see in the place, the assembly line of the 747, it's written on a big board, we build legend. And I think that the 747 is one of those big stories. Air France has a long story with a 747. The first one, if I do remember, was a 747-100 that joined the fleet in 1970, April the 9th. It was the Fox Bravo Victor Papa Alpha. I think that was the registration. But anyway, it was a 100, was Pratt & Whitney's. That was the first of all the aircraft that was built by Boeing. And then after this, we had a bunch of different ones. The 747-200, the 747-300. We had a 747 cargo, what we call a freighter. We had the 747-400 ERF, Extended Range Freighter, which is a cargo, and the BCF. It's a Boeing converted freighter. So it's a bunch of different airplanes. You have to understand that the great part of this airplane, it's extremely redundant. It's easy to fly, it's pilot friendly, and any pilot that will fly Boeing, whichever it's a classic, which is the 1, 2, 300 series, or 400, will fall in love. Never heard any pilot criticizing this aircraft. I would like you enough to be able to fly as a co-pilot and as an instructor on the 100, 200, 300, the freighter, the 400, and the RF2. And it's just a beautiful aircraft. It seems that we'll be able to see maybe a little part of Greenland on the left side. I don't know if you can catch this, but to come back with the 747, Guillaume told you about certain features of this airplane. Pretty much everything is fourfold. It's multiplied by 4 engines, 4 electrical system, 4 hydraulic systems. It is as far as I can remember, I have more than 6,000 hours of flight on a 747, and I never had any kind of discrepancies or problem. Or if I did have one, it was a very small one. So this aircraft is extremely pilot friendly. This is the part of my point of view, but it's shared among the pilots with the fleet. Right now we have only 7 passengers airplanes left and 2 cargo out of more than 12. And unfortunately next year this love affair will end with Air France. Some companies did decide to buy the 800. We did not do that. We have the A380, but the jumbo will leave the fleet. As I said before, Boeing people and women at Boeing Field in Washington State used to call this the Queen of the Skies. Tells you a lot about the, you know that the British, the English use the she for airplanes and ships, and I do believe they're right because it has a lot of class. It's beautiful. If you look at the airplane from outside, it's almost 50 years old. If you look at the 747 from the 1 up to the 400, with some differences, like the 300 with an stretch upper deck and a 400, but it's still the same aircraft. The only difference is that it has new technology inside, the FMSs, ACAS, and other kind of system, but the airplane is still the same. It flies the same way. So basically, when it will leave our fleet, it will make a lot of people sad, because definitely generation of pilots at Air France flew this aircraft for the last 50 years, and they will definitely miss it. Even though we're buying new airplanes, the 747 is one out of a few. And last but not least, as I said before, I keep laughing and smiling saying this, but I was born in Africa, and I told you before, Swahili language, Yambo means welcome. So each time I climb on this aircraft, I feel welcome. This is like home. I can say that to my wife, but definitely I feel as home here almost anywhere else. So once again, there's no way we could not talk about the love affair between Air France and Boeing if we're not talking of all the different type of aircraft that we had in our fleet. We were the company that launched the ERF, the Extended Range Freighter. We're the first one to get it, I do believe in 2002. And then don't remember for sure all the other dates, but it was continuously from 1970 all the way up to 2002. We kept on having a 747. The number of airplanes, I don't recall, but there's been a lot of those. And we flew the 100, like the 200, 300, we were all qualified on the same airplane. Like we fly cargo and 400 the same way. There's no distinction between pilots flying cargo like you would have in other companies. We fly, and it's the same pleasure. The aircraft is extremely smooth, easy to handle, easy to land. As you could see before, we'll come into Mexico, which is not that easy an airport, but the airplane is extremely easy to coordinate and to get used to. So at the beginning, maybe you feel frightened because it's big, knowing that the nose gear, for example, is about 3 meters behind, and the body and the main landing gear is about 30 meters behind. And the fact that you're sitting up here at close to 11 meters gives you a weird sense of how fast you can eventually travel on taxiways. But you get used to this very easily, and once you taxi at that height, you feel on top of the world. This is maybe the only thing I can tell you on the Boeing. I could talk for hours, so I'm going to let it here because we have a flight to fly, but you can ask to any pilot, they will certainly feel the same way about this beautiful Jumbo. So just to remember, Jumbo was not a Boeing name. It was the media that called it Jumbo because it looked like an elephant in the beginning. Barnum and Bailey in New York was a very old circus, and they called it Jumbo. But you know what? They were right to call it Jumbo because if you saw the movie of Disney, Jumbo, you fall in love with that little elephant. Well, this is the same thing for the Jumbo. It's an aircraft. We definitely are all in love with it.
What would that be? I need to pass the line for here. That would be 85. That's 498. That's true. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, hello again. Just to keep you an update, we're pretty much almost 8 hours into the flight, so there's another 3.5 hours to go. It's pretty much like going from Paris to Casablanca, but we're almost there. For your information, right now we're about 10 minutes north of Chicago. You can see a bunch of different airports here, the blue circles, and here you have the IATA identification. Milwaukee is here. 80 nautical miles ahead of us is Chicago, and you can see there's a bunch of airplanes around us. This is what we call a TCAS, Traffic Collision Avoiding System. An airplane is 1,000 feet below, but it's far, almost 40 miles, which is close to 70 kilometers, so even an eye would not pick it up. There's one closer here, about 1,000 feet higher, and there's one out there. You can see there's one all the way down at the bottom there. It's about 1,000 feet higher, and it should be this one. So a lot of aircraft. Chicago, the biggest airport in the world, so certainly those airplanes are maybe some of them flying in or out. This one just popped up, so it's climbing out of Milwaukee or Chicago, certainly climbing to its cruising level. The route is exactly the same as I told you before. We'll be heading straight for Houston. As you can see, it's heading southwest. We'll be turning a little bit more to the south after Houston. It's going to be pretty much a southerly heading all the way to Mexico City. We talked about the fuel a little bit earlier. Guillaume brought up the synoptic of the fuel. As you can see right now, this is the normal configuration. Out of the 8 tanks, the standard one is empty. There's 44 tons left in our tanks. The 2 reserves have been empty, and they are transferred into main 2 and main 3 tanks, and with pretty much 11 tanks in each different reservoirs. So what you look up here is, you won't see it really well, but we had to switch off a number of pumps that you can see, and we close a certain number of valves. So that means that each engine here, 1, 2, 3, 4, is being fed by its own tanks. In English they call it fuel to engine configuration. So right now each engine is being fed by its own tank, and this will remain the same till we land in Mexico City. If we talk of fuel policy, as you know, it's very important in any company in the world. Fuel is expensive, so what we have to do is to try to stay as close as possible to the flight planning and the fuel that we decided to upload in Paris. For example, here the optimal level is almost 370, and we're 360. So Frédéric, you're certainly going to ask at Chicago to be able to climb to flight level 370. That means that we'll be consuming certainly more efficiently our fuel, knowing that we have a maximum altitude of 400. So it's not a problem of the aircraft being able to climb. It can climb the big engines, powerful engines, but we're looking to optimize our flight and the fuel consumption. What you see here is on our flight survey, we have a number of waypoints, and obviously each time, and the minimum is once every hour, we do it on a more regular basis, we have to check the fuel, mainly to see if there's no leaks, fuel leaks. You can imagine a fuel leak on an airplane like 747. Just remind, there's been history and accidents in the history of aviation where people had fuel leaks and ended up in emergency situations. So what we do here is, this is the constant work that we do, is communication with the ATC. That's what Frédéric does, checking the fuel, trying to get shortcuts, and trying to be on time at our destination. So here the fuel is just, I won't go into the details of this little schematic, but basically what we're looking at is do we have the fuel that we're supposed to have at this particular waypoint or position. And then what we're looking to is to figure out first if there's a fuel leak and if we're consuming more than we should. Otherwise, we have to change our strategy, maybe climb, maybe try to deviate, take another route. The key here is to be able to have the fuel that we want to have at destination, which is about 14.5 tons. So this is something that we have to do on a regular basis. And I'll show you when we get to Chicago. We'll do it again, a vertical Chicago, and we'll be able to see where we stand in reference to the fuel that we uploaded in Paris.
Well, as we said before, we just left Chicago, going towards St. Louis, Missouri, and you'll be able to see the city pretty much around the bend of the river. And if your eyes are good enough, you'll be able to see maybe the arch, which makes St. Louis a special city. We're about 3 hours from landing into Mexico City. And after St. Louis is pretty much direct to Houston. We still have a southwesterly heading, and slowly it will turn to south after Houston.
Number 440, affirmative, just stand by one. Southwest 380, contact Kansas City Center 135.05. No, 380. Number 895, Delta Mike, contact Kansas City Center 133.2. 3322, by Delta Mike.
Just to wrap up what we just did before with the fuel, we just passed a beam, St. Louis, and as I told you before, one of the important job that we have actually is to be sure that we're on the dot is concerning the fuel. And what we have here is, so we make a check at a position Seattle, and you can see here, I'll explain two things on the 747-400, but it's the same for each and every aircraft. To be able to figure out if we have eventually a fuel leak, is to check the fuel remaining. So on this page here, this is called progress fuel. You see totalizer and calculator. Totalizer is the sum up of all the tanks, the fuel remaining in the tanks. If you add all four of them, you can see that you have close to 37.1. This is exactly what we have, 37.1 tons. But the calculated is two different things. It's the fuel that we uploaded in Paris, and they subtract the fuel that was used, and they come up with another number. And the difference here is close to half a ton, 600 kilos. So what is important for us to know is to realize if it's just a little difference according to the density, or is it because we have a fuel leak. If you can see here in the tanks, this is what we use, the fuel we use, and I said this is what we have in the tanks. It's pretty much the same, so it means that there's no fuel leak. But what we have to actually follow up on is to be sure that there's no big deviation from that fuel. So here on these numbers, a beam Seattle, St. Louis, you see I put a bunch of different numbers. This one is the totalizer, this is the calculator, and this is what we'll call in French the J plus T-8. It means that we're 600 kilos difference between both. Doesn't mean there's a fuel leak, but you definitely have to realize that this should be eventually reducing as more that we fly. It should normally get down to the same numbers. Let me remind you that on the tanks normally the gauges are made for the minimum fuel in the tanks. Obviously it has to be accurate. Once you get close to your destination where the fuel is definitely less than on takeoff. So there's a lot of things that are influencing those numbers, but you have to keep an eye and a watch on this. And you can see, for example, that we took 135 tons out of Paris, and so for the time being, you see beam Seattle, St. Louis, we did consume about 97.4, and the flight plan pretty much had a forecast of 97.9, so we're pretty good. We're saving about half a ton, 500 kilos since we left Paris for different reasons, shortcuts. We didn't have to wait in Paris. It was a rolling takeoff, and we're pretty much following up the optimal altitudes in order to consume less fuel. So this is important. You got to do this at least once every hour. You see here, there's a couple of fuel checks that was done by the co-pilot, and I'll keep on doing this. The next one should be somewhere before Houston. Houston is in about 400 nautical miles, and the key here is to get to Mexico down here with a fuel that is as accurate as possible, to have eventually an accurate landing weight, to be able to compute the correct speeds for landing, and the fuel remaining eventually in case of problem if we have to divert to our destination, from a destination to Acapulco, for example. So this has been done. As you can see, there's no fuel leak. There's a little difference between what is calculated by the computer and what the gauges are telling us in the tanks. But everything is normal, and whatsoever, there's no fuel leak. So we'll keep on washing this all the way to our destination to be sure that things are improving. And then when we get there, we're close to the fuel that we decided to have before eventually landing or diverting to our alternate.
Moi, je vois par exemple mes congés, j'ai pas ça fait relativement longtemps. Toujours donné, mais je vais mourir avec la PA, avec la banane, mais tu vois, par exemple, cet été, j'ai 4 jours. Une période de 1er juin à 15 septembre, j'ai 4 jours. Alors, je me suis battu, je vais laisser 15, vous me donnez. Oui, mais genre, je te comprends.
Alpha 438 heavy contact, Maya, Houston Center 124.76. 124.72. United 678, clear direct Hamel.
Corpus Christi, right?
Direct Hamel for United 670. Yes, that's what I'm going to
Contact Houston Center 124.72.
124.72 AC 5805.
Air France 438, contact Monterey Center 124.5.
124.5, Air France 438, good day. De México 266.
26, buenas tardes, 687. Buenas tardes.
Monterey, buenas tardes, Air France 438, that is about 380.
Air France 438 Heavy, buenas tardes. Radar contact available for you 37 or 3990.
Air France 438, requesting to 390.
Air France 438, Royal climb to flight level 390.
Royal climb to 390, Air France 438.
Non, tu n'es pas mis, c'était difficile, mais tu sais, de mettre 12 000 en altitude, tout ça.
Oui,
Parce que, bon, maintenant les gens le savent, mais au début, les gens se posaient des questions, ils cherchaient. C'est en quelle année t'as fait ça? Des souvenirs comme ça incroyables.
Well, we're close to our top of descent, so we'll start briefing for the arrival at Mexico. We've been in the airplane now for almost 11 hours. So big half hour to go. We used to work with what we call a TEM, Threat and Error Management. So I'm going to first talk of the threats that we have at Mexico. First of all, it's a high elevation airport. So there's 3 things that we're going to have to definitely look into. And the first of all is the air traffic control here. The communication not that easy. Because of, I guess, the tools that they have, and then the Spanish and French will always mix up together. So basically, it's not a critic, it's just a fact. So if there's any hesitation, if there's a clearance that we don't understand, we make it repeat. Yeah. All 3 of us have to be sure of the clearance. That's the first point. The second one is the altitude. They often ask us to reduce our airspeed, and we're limited at 20,000 feet to select flaps. That means that we're not supposed to lower the flaps above 20,000 feet, and it did happen before, so be very careful. If they ask us to reduce the speed and you see that I'm above 20,000 feet, just let me know. Could be happening that I'm busy doing something else and ask you for flaps, and that would be my mistake. So this is something else we have to look into. The third one is obviously the high elevation airport. So there's a bunch of things. Good weather today, but nevertheless we have to be careful with the localizer. Speeds are high, so the overshoot is possible of the runway axis. So I'll do my best to come in with the right configuration, the right speed, and I'll talk a little bit later. I will keep the autopilot and throttle pretty much until the final turn. I'll keep you posted for this. The landing too, so that means a high elevation, flaps 30, use of the reverse and the speed brakes, and I find almost 2,500 meters of runway. That is, if you run it up the next 100 meters. So the key point here is no flare too long. That means if you believe that it's more like, for example, 4 seconds, don't hesitate. Even you, Guillaume, you just raise your voice and your announce, go around. We'll talk about it later, but I will apply, obviously, the procedure. So that's another important point. The rest, I can start talking about the briefing by itself. We did agree with the fuel. Almost 120 tons of fuel burn was the landing weight today of 45 tons. So that gives us a speed of 143 indicated airspeed for the flaps 30. I will bring the airplane on flaps 30, and as said before, with the automation on. For the descent, you check the arrivals. The star is going to be certainly an F-star to Alpha. There's the altitudes in there. You check them out. I won't repeat them. And it's descent approach. So basically, if we're clear for the approach, I will be able to put in the altitudes according to. It's not working. Okay. So basically, well, we'll have to follow the F-star to Alpha, and it's what we call pretty much a constant descent approach. So that means that if we're clear for this approach, we'll be able to descend at the altitudes that are printed on the map. For example, the lower one here, flight level 230, here it could be 30,000 feet, and so forth, all the way to runway 05 right. Transition level here is 195. This is an important point. In that case, after this, we'll be switching to QNH. Okay, today it's in inches, 30.18. It's getting lower. For the time being, that's the last that we have. Another point important is the altitude, safety altitude. As you can see, when we start, we have a radar map, but otherwise, basically, if we're on our route, it's beautiful weather, we should be on those altitudes. But basically, we could have headings. In that case, we'll keep, in our mind, 12,000 feet as a minimum safe altitude, and then depending on the heading we'll get, we should be within those brackets. But keep in mind not to get lower than the altitudes that are printed on the map. For the approach, as you could see, thank you for inserting the nav aids. It will be a 05 right. Basically, after San Mateo, we'll be heading towards that radial, and I put a radial of just to warn us, to remember us to start turning towards the final. We certainly will be clear. Could be headings, but it could be just clear for the 05 right. In that case, we'll just follow what is printed. As I said before, if we're clear, we'll be able, passing the point, to lower the altitudes in order to be able to be stabilized before the intercept of the glide slope. Today's beautiful weather, but nevertheless, I would suggest stabilization of 1,000 feet height. And if we're not stabilized, as I said before, the announcement will be go around, and we'll proceed on the go around, which is pretty easy in the axis, and the left turn towards Santa Lucia, climbing to 12,000 feet, which is the altitude we kept for the minimum safe altitude initially. The runway is dry. I talked about this desceration process, using of the speed brakes, reverse, and outer brake 3. And the runway in itself is longer. We have certainly a margin. I would like to have about 300 meters margin on this one. So runway 35 30, 25, that gives us 1,000. Let's see, that should be 700 meters left at the end of the runway. It's not that large, 45 meters. There's Evasi or Papi on the left side, 3 degrees, which is congruent with the glide path here. The minimum are 7,600.
Yep.
And let me remind all of you that the altitude is 7,300. That means that stabilization will be 8,300 in QNH. Okay? For the rest, we certainly will be vacating via Golf or Bravo, depending on. I don't know about the traffic. There could be traffic taking off on 05 left. Or Fox. We have to check on the NOTAMs if there's any restriction for the 7.4. So there's 2 options. It could be Fox. We maintain before crossing 05 left, and we go on Bravo to go towards our gate. We don't have the parking yet, but it should be Bravo all the way to 26, 25. The other option is possible. It could be Bravo, and then all the way down to Delta. A little side step here for Echo 2. We maintain before 05 left again, and then Echo 2 Bravo for the stand 25 or 26. Okay? We have enough time to hold, and I have time to go around 2. I have about 4,600, so a good half hour of waiting, and we'll be holding at San Lucia. And otherwise, Acapulco, weather is fine too, and there's nothing special on the NOTAMs either. So whatever happens, we have 2 projects. If we have to go around, we'll ask for a second approach into Mexico. And if there's another reason that is beyond our concern, like they have to shut down the airport, or there's a airplane on the runway, in that case, we'll divert immediately to Acapulco. Is that okay with you?
Okay, no questions.
And I'll keep it on LNAV, VNAV most of the time. I just have a speed intervention, and when we stabilize at the altitude of 8,800, I'll just go on heading towards the ILS. Okay? And I'll take it manually just before intercepting the glide slope. Is that okay with you, Guillaume? No questions?
No questions.
In that case, checklist is completed. We can go for descent checklist.
Descent checklist. Recall checked. Auto brake.
3.
Landing data.
So VREF flaps 30 will be 143, and the minimum for the LS 05 right is 7,600.
And approach briefing.
Completed.
Descent checklist completed.
Thank you.
Mesdames et messieurs, votre commandant, quelques informations sur notre arrivée. Une descente prévue d'ici 5 heures.
Go ahead.
Atterrissage est prévu malheureusement avec un petit peu de retard. 18h25 heure locale, donc nous serons au poste de stationnement vers 30. À peu près 5, avec moins de 10 minutes en tout cas, 5 minutes de retard sur le programme initial. Le temps à destination est très beau, 25 degrés, un ciel dégagé, un léger vent du nord-est et un petit peu de smog, c'est je pense de par la saison et peu de vent, ce qui malheureusement laisse un petit peu de suspension, un peu de pollution en suspension dans la région de Mexico. Pas de turbulence prévue, donc une fin de vol qui doit être relativement calme. Je tiens à vous remercier dans tout l'équipage d'avoir choisi Air France pour ce vol. Nous savons que vous avez le choix de compagnies aériennes sur ces destinations. Nous souhaitons une excellente soirée ici à Mexico, ou quelle que soit votre destination finale pour les passagers en correspondance. Et nous espérons tous vous revoir bientôt parmi nous. Dans tout l'équipage, au revoir et à bientôt. Ladies and gentlemen, your captain, some information on our arrival. We are to begin our descent in about 15 minutes. The landing is forecast at 6:25 p.m. local time. Show would be 5 minutes late at our gate today at Mexico. Weather is beautiful, sky clear, northeasterly wind, and ground temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, which is pretty much in the low 80s Fahrenheit. I do thank you on behalf of the whole crew to have chosen Air France for this flight. We know that you have the choice of companies on this destination. We do wish you a very nice evening here in Mexico, or where final destination may be for the passengers on connecting flights. And we do hope to see you soon on one of our flights. On behalf of the whole crew, au revoir et à bientôt.
Already checked at 20,000. Now.
Yep. Minus 20. Approach checklist.
Approach checklist. Altimeters.
QNH 3018 set.
QNH 3018 set.
Thank you.
Checklist completed.
Thanks. And I think you can switch on to radar on your side now.
Yeah, clear it right. Speed back 220 knots and approach 120.0 France 438. Bye-bye.
Okay, we're below 20,000. That's
Yep.
good. So flaps 1.
Speed check. Flaps 1.
Speed 220.
Checked. Basic approach Buenos Aires France 438. Sending 13,000 San Mateo.
Air France 438, laser contact descent to 1, sitting tag, watching a 1 2000, Air France 438.
Descent 12000 Air France 438.
2000.
Checked.
And it's still good with the minimum safe altitude.
Reste 10 000.
Yep, thank you.
Je les attache. Seatbelts on.
Check.
Air France 438, keep descending to 5 miles, North Mateo Viola.
We keep 220 knots to 5 miles north of Mateo Viola, France 438.
Been 5 miles before?
Before.
Okay. That means there's someone behind us.
Air France 438, immediate speed is 00 knots, clear, ILA DME 5 right approach.
Speed back 200 knots and clear ILS DME 5 right approach, France 438.
Flaps 5. We're clear for the
Flaps 5.
Right. Thanks, speed 200.
Checked.
The Alex looks like the good one. 109.11, 053. Level change.
Checked. First, flight level change
Checked.
completed.
Flaps 10.
Flaps 10.
Checked.
Cabin ready.
Checked.
BNC, préparez-vous pour l'atterrissage. Vector frequency.
Yep. Okay, gear down. Speed 180.
Checked.
Flaps 20.
Gear down. Flaps 20. Speed alt.
Checked. So minimum speed will be 150, so we'll keep 160 until the final turn.
Yeah.
Flaps 25.
2500.
Checked. Heading sail.
Checked. Flaps 25.
Checked. Flaps 30. Speed
Flaps
150.
30. Descent 8,800.
Yep.
First flight level speed.
Alice is being identified.
First flight level speed.
Zero runway. You ready?
Checked.
Air France 438 approaching Plaza 6, regular service terminated, contact out 118.55.
11855 France 438. Bye bye.
Speed 148. And landing checklist.
New vertical speed.
Yep. You need to get the walk.
Tower Buenos Aires France 438 on final 5 right.
Air France 438 Heavy Rocket 5 right, approach 30, this one 19, wind 110 degrees 8 knots, clear to land.
Air France 438, gate to lane 5 right.
Landing checklist.
Landing checklist, speed brake,
Arm.
landing gear,
Down.
flaps,
30.
landing checklist completed.
Thank you. Can you have a progress 2 for the wind on your side?
Yeah. Wind 020 degrees,
1,000.
7 knots.
Thank you.
Stabilized.
Yep.
Gear on altitude 12,000.
Yep, please. You can. I checked it out. That's good. So gear, flaps, lights, look clear.
Yeah. Wind 090 degrees, 6 knots.
Thank you.
$500.
Checked.
400. Approaching minimums.
100 degrees,
300.
7 knots.
Minimums.
Continue.
200.
Wind calm.
100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Speed brakes up. Reversals normal. $60 knots. The brakes.
Fix left. Maybe the next one is here.
First left wheel short of 5 left at France 438.
Hold short of 05 left. Next one.
Yeah.
And we're on Bravo.
Approaching 23 right.
And it's ground. Level change.
Checked. First flight level change
Check.
completed.
Flaps 10.
Flaps 10.
Checked.
Cabin ready.
Checked. Okay, gear down. Speed 180.
Checked.
Flaps 20.
Gear down. Flaps 20. Speed alt.
Checked. So minimum speed will be 150, so we'll keep 160 until the final turn.
Yeah.
Flaps 25.
2,500.
Checked. Heading sail.
Checked. Flaps 25.
Checked. Flaps 30. Speed
Flaps
150.
30. Descent 8,800.
Yep. Hold on.
First flight divergent speed.
This has been identified.
First flight divergent speed.
See the runway. You ready?
Checked. 11855 France 438. Bye bye.
Speed 148. And Landing checklist.
New vertical speed.
Yep. You need to get the walk.
Tower Buenos Aires reference 438 on final 5 right.
Aircraft 438 heavy, 105 right, approach 30, decimal 19, wind 110 degrees, 8 knots, clear to land.
Air France 438, gate to land 5 right.
Landing checklist.
Landing checklist, speed brake,
Arm.
landing gear,
Down.
flaps,
30.
landing checklist completed.
Thank you. Can you have a progress too for the wind on your side?
Yeah. Wind 020 degrees,
1,000.
7 knots.
Thank you.
Stabilized.
Yep.
Gear around altitude 12,000.
Yep, please. You can. I checked it out. That's good. So gear, flaps, lights, look clear.
Yeah. Wind 090 degrees, 6 knots.
Thank you.
$500.
Checked.
400. Approaching minimums.
100 degrees,
300.
7 knots.
Minimums.
Continue.
200.
Wind calm.
100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Speed brakes up. Reversals normal. $60 knots. The brakes.
Next left. Maybe the next one is here.
First left, we are short of 5 left, Air France 438.
Hold short of 05 left. Next one.
Yeah.
And we're on Bravo.
Approaching 23 right.
And it's great.
Clear to cross 5 left on Bravo 1285 Air France 438.
It's clear on the right side for you.
Clear right hand side.
Airbus is vacating the runway 05 left. It's clear.
Ground Buenos Aires Air France 438 heavy on Bravo. We taxi Bravo, gate 31 Alpha Air France 438. That's it.
Good. So it's clear. The guys here.
Yeah.
It's right on the right side. It's good for you.
Yeah.
Clear. I see 29, 31.
Yeah, 31 and 31 Alpha.
Okay, the first one. All the lights off. Don't mind the pressure crew announcement.
PNC, dernier virage.
The area is clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right
Here's
to left.
good. Web walkers are clearing the way.
And we're reading again.
feel good on the right side, huh, for you? Parking brake set,
Checked.
Okay, ground.
Good afternoon, cockpit. We have shocks in place.
Okay, buenas tardes, muchísimas gracias. Brakes released.
Aircraft steady.
Okay, you can report the aircraft. Thank you. Aircraft is A-OK.
Roger, thanks.
Shutdown checklist whenever you want.
Shutdown checklist, hydraulic panel, set, fuel pumps, off, flaps,
Up.
parking brake,
Is released.
fuel control switches,
Get off phone.
weather radar,
Thank you.
shutdown checklist complete.
Great. Well, we could do a debriefing for what we did compared to what we were expecting. Beautiful 747-800 on the right side. Just for information, we were looking for stabilizer 1000. We had it. The approach was pretty much similar to what we expected. Nothing really specific, and the fuel is what we expected either. We even have a little bit less. We consume less fuel than expected either because of the 3 tons less freight that we had out of Paris. So any questions or any suggestions for the next one? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the ride. And for you, well, thank you for being with us on this flight. And now we're in Mexico, and hold on because we're gonna have to bring you back to Paris. So enjoy your time in Mexico, and I hope you enjoy the flight with us. See you next time.